Norman Eng teaches educators to communicate with their audiences. We talk balancing teaching and being a business owner and how self publishing can be a great option for academics. As I close out this season of The Social Academic, I'm sharing with you two awesome professional development people. Norman Eng, owner of Education by Design, is first up. Last fall, my fiance was looking to improve his teaching. I was working on creating my online course on social media for academics, so we were both in the market for some pedagogy. We wanted to connect with our students. I discovered Norman's book, Teaching College, the Ultimate Guide to Lecturing, Presenting, and Engaging Students, and read it cover to cover. It was so helpful. I knew when putting together the interview lineup for the Social Academic that Norman Eng was someone I wanted to share with you. In this chat, we talk about his business, Education by Design, which he founded as a way to help academics communicate more effectively. And he has some clear and concrete advice for you, like his answer to what is your top recommendation for educators who want to get their name out there? My name is Jennifer Van Alstyne, and welcome to the Social Academic Interview Series. All right, so today we are here with Dr. Norman Eng. How are you today, Norman?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me here. Really excited.
Oh, I'm doing so well. I'm glad we're getting a chance to sit down and talk. So
Yes.
just to get started, could you tell me a little bit about you?
Yeah, of course. So my background is in marketing and education, meaning that I started out in advertising as an account executive. That's basically where I helped clients develop, a focused message across, different media like TV and print and outdoor and other collateral material. But that's when I switched careers to teaching after the stint in marketing. And I switched careers to teaching, first as a public school teacher in New York City, and then now as a professor in the field of education. Basically, I teach teachers and I get them ready to work in public schools, both at the undergrad and the graduate level. So most of the research and work I do now relates to my business. So mostly, I teach instruction. I do research with instruction and teacher education. So that's my background.
That's great. And, that is so necessary right now. When I just finished my grad program, I definitely felt like I didn't have enough teacher training. And when I got out and realized there were so many tools and people talking about it on especially social media, it was really exciting for me. And then, of course, I found your book and I found you and I was like, this is what I've been looking for. So I'd love to hear more about your current work as founder and president of Education by Design. Did I say that right?
Sure. It's Education by Design, exactly right. So I founded Education by Design as a way to help academics communicate more effectively, whether it's to students, to readers, audience members at a conference, or just in general, the larger public. The thing is that academics, they know a lot of stuff, but they never really learn how to leverage that expertise. And so, they spend their whole time focusing on content, right? Like on research, on data, not always realizing that people don't always care about information per se. There's so much of it out there. And if you really want to change lives, right, whether your discipline is in business and science, medicine, philosophy, whatever, you have to design your content. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have to design your content and you have to package it in a way that resonates. And so that's what I do with my business, right? My books teach professors how to teach and how to present to audiences. And I also have an online course as well that does the same thing, as well as my coaching and workshop training for faculty and for universities. So that's what Education by Design is about.
So your goal is to use design as a way to really help people communicate the goal of their work or the goal of their teaching or learning experience. Yeah. Does that sound right?
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that I look at design as trying to solve problems. That's really, in the end, what design is about. When you think about things like, a door where you don't know whether you're pushing the door or pulling the door, that's badly designed. So a well-designed door is trying to figure out or solve that problem, so it makes it as seamless and easy as possible for people to use. And
I love that analogy.
Right?
That's so great.
That's what we're trying to do, whether as teachers or just in general as communicators. If we have all this content, none of it matters. It's all about how you kind of package what you say in a way that people understand, because content doesn't matter. I mean, it does matter, but it's important, but how you say it is even more important. That's the bottom line.
Right. So the content that people are developing in their academic lives and their teaching lives, it's great. But if they can communicate that effectively with tools like design, then people can really get the message and really resonate with that work.
Yeah. I mean, and that's exactly why I was kind of drawn. I like how you've kind of used this idea of, whether it's the social academic or academic design, that whole idea, because that's really what we're trying to do, is to solve that problem, is to try to figure out how to design it in a way that makes it easier, whether it's to get the word out there or to put your work on social media, whatever. It's a design process. I always have thought of design as this way to kind of solve problems.
Now, you're also an adjunct associate professor of education. What's it like teaching and balancing a business?
So right now, I'd say I split my work about 70-30 on my business versus, the teaching part, the professor part. So as an adjunct, it is easier because mostly I teach in the afternoons and evenings. So that leaves the mornings for my business, which is by design. So no pun intended. So typically that's from like 6:30 in the morning till about 11 a.m. So it might be me writing for my next book, or writing a blog post, or working with clients, or planning a workshop, or even things like, fine tuning my sales funnel or planning a promotion, all parts of my business. So my point is that I reserve the mornings exclusively for cognitively demanding work because it works for me. The teaching part for me, honestly, that's automatic because I've done it for a long time, and because I've done the planning for it, all the planning, for the lecture planning, all that stuff days before. So the truth is like, for me, that's not the cognitively demanding part. It's automatic. And so I reserve that part where I really need to think, where I really need to use my brain, where I need focus for that mornings.
And that's really interesting.
Yeah, because I think we're all trying to find that balance. And so like, I always recommend because I have people asking me, oh, so how do you find that balance? And oftentimes excuse me, I find that it's all about like the energy. So, when do you have the most energy? For some, like my wife, it's in the evening, right? And for me, it's in the mornings. And so you got to kind of leverage that time and then plan everything else around it.
So it sounds like you've planned your life essentially by design, and the work schedule that you do around what works best for you in terms of when you're motivated to work, when you work best, and when it works overall with your schedule for life.
Yeah, that's really it. I think I was really influenced by, there's a guy, his name is Tony Schwartz. He wrote this book called The Power of Full Engagement. And so what he had said was, it's not about managing time, which is what we all tend to think of when we're busy. He said it's about managing energy, because if you know when your peak time is in terms of energy and leverage that and use that, that's when you can be most productive. And the key is to kind of make it routine. In other words, don't just work on the business when you have free time or when you're motivated. I remember something like, they're saying that the difference between an amateur and a professional in terms of productivity is that the amateur relies on motivation, whereas the professional relies on a process or routine. So once I figured out where my energy levels were, which is again in the morning, I made it a routine, especially when it comes to things like writing, right? So for example, like I wrote like 3 books in 3 years because of that routine. So that 3-hour window from 6:30 to 10, it's 9:30.
That's your productive time.
That's exactly it. Because what happens is like I know that my energy flags when it gets to that early afternoon to afternoon time, like 3 p.m. So that's when I go running. Obviously that's not on the days that I teach, but when I'm not teaching, right? When I'm not teaching, like those are the days that I actually go running or kind of do exercise or do other things when I don't need to, when I need to get my energy back up or when I'm just tired. It really is just kind of finding when that energy is peak, leveraging that, taking advantage of that so that you focus during that time. And then during your non-peak times, that's when you can do the other things like the exercise, for me, honestly, even the teaching part. But yeah, and so oftentimes that just means that focusing in on the times that you are at your peak. That's really, for me, the key to balancing the business and the teaching part of it.
Well, it sounds like it works. I mean, last year you made $25,000 from a single book, and that's amazing. How did you do that?
I have to say that was a game changer. I mean, the idea of publishing independently, which is not typically what you think of when you think of academics, whether they're, because you're always trying to publish for these big publishers, right? You're thinking of like whether it's MIT Press or Random House or Pearson or whatever. So this was such a game changer because I actually wrote about the journey, my kind of self-publishing journey on my blog and also on Medium as well, just to kind of spread the word and just I found there's a lot of professors who feel the same way, like, oh my God, I'm doing all this work. But so essentially, like I started doing this independent publishing thing or self-publishing thing because I was getting frustrated at the process of working with these big traditional publishing houses, whatever, not just big, but just these traditional publishing houses for my first textbook. The fact that you just don't have a lot of control over your book. Talking about things like your book cover design, your title, your price. You can't determine any of that stuff, even distribution, marketing, and even sometimes like your content. Of course, like publishers will say, oh, it's a collaborative process. You're writing the book and we're partners and all that good stuff. Of course, they'll say that. But the truth is like in the end, when push comes to shove, they're going to make the final decision about how much to price your book, what design to use for your cover. You don't really have that control. So those decisions weren't necessarily in my best interest because they have these other goals. And I'm sure your listeners know because a lot of them are probably, publishing or writing books or have written books with these traditional publishing houses. And they know that the most important thing for these traditional publishers is, of course, to maximize corporate profits.
Of course.
So, that means that ultimately they're going to put their best resources into books that are guaranteed to sell, which kind of sounds bad. But think about it, like you have these big names like Malcolm Gladwell or Simon Sinek or Adam Grant. Their books, they make more money for their publisher than all of our books combined. I mean, when I say our books, I mean like us regular folks. You know what I mean? And so like this light bulb moment really pushed me to say, you know what? Because my best interests aren't necessarily their best interests, I thought it just made more sense to kind of take control of my books and my business. And so self-publishing was that avenue. And I did all the research and because like, I'm not just going to jump in and start writing until I know what I'm up against. Like maybe 90%, I can't remember the exact number, but like 90% of self-published books never sell more than 500 copies lifetime, or they never get more than 10 reviews on Amazon.
Wow.
So this is like, you put in all this work and then you realize that publishers aren't really doing all of the marketing all that they could to get you to sell thousands of copies or get a bunch of reviews on Amazon. If you're just focusing on the writing part of it as a self-publisher, but not the marketing aspect of it, you're going to end up like those thousands of books that are published by academics that nobody ever reads. And let's be honest, there are a lot of books out there.
There are so many books
that you'll see, like there's like one review, or two reviews, or like nobody reads it. Because the truth is, like I said, the traditional publishers, like they want to get these books out there because they know there's some demand for it. But honestly, like they're not going to put in all of the marketing help to kind of push you there. And
I
so,
agree. And I also think like if you're not asking for their help marketing, like they're not going to just give it to you necessarily because it costs them more money.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember, and I wrote about this as well. That when they sent me like a marketing survey, and it was just like basic information, like, oh, how do you want to, what are some things that you want to highlight in your book that the sales force could talk about, and things of that nature, or a few
Yeah.
sentences to position your book, or keywords to use so that people can search it online. But like that's it. Then they'll
And
go to
you
you and
came from a marketing background, so you
right,
recognize that that
right,
was right, like the
right.
minimum.
Yeah, and the thing that shocked me the most was the fact that they're like, "How many people do you have on Twitter?" That's like the extent of their of the marketing help in terms
Yeah,
of
I've
social
heard that
media.
from like more and more people just kind
It's
of in the
not all that
academic
much.
world getting turned down because they don't have enough like social media
Yep,
following.
yep.
And that's shocking to me because like these niche audiences are actually way more likely to help you sell your book because they know you and care about you.
They
And
do.
they're happy to share it with their network too. So yeah,
That's
there's a bit
so
of a
true.
disconnect there.
I mean, the thing is like that's the thing that I think a lot of scholars, faculty, whoever, researchers who are listening to your show, they're if they've written books or they're thinking of publishing on their own, like there are things that are very different from the way you wrote books for traditional publishers, where the only thing you had to worry about was the writing part of it. Like if you're not thinking of things like how to build momentum and interest in your book from the
Mhm.
get-go, like I actually gave away like almost 2,000 copies of my book in the beginning, like literally
Wow.
gave away. I'm talking about ebooks,
Yeah, yeah.
way, because like I had clients that I worked with who wanted to self-publish their books. They were shocked. They were like, "Aren't you leaving money on the table? Like that's revenue." Or they'll say stuff
Mm.
like, "I can't believe you want me to price my ebook for 99 cents. Are you kidding me? That cheapens my work. I should be charging $50 for it." You know what? You go ahead and do that, and I promise you, no one will buy it. Okay. So, like I said, as a former marketer, like I know how important it is to promote your book,
And you
especially
made
because
money from your book, so
yes, you will. Like it will come on the back end. Like if you do it right,
mm.
they will come. But if you don't build that interest, that momentum from early on, like Amazon's not going to help you. They have like algorithms where if you have certain number of reviews, if you kind of build buzz around your book, they'll start actually promoting it to other people. They'll actually send out emails to their subscribers and say, "Hey, here's a new book by so and so, check it out." But if you don't build that momentum, they're not going to do that, because of
Right.
course their bottom line is they want to sell books which have interest in them.
Of
And
course.
so for me, like that was why that self-publishing part was so enticing, because I was able to leverage my background in marketing and make sure to kind of give it my all in terms of the marketing part of it. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of the tough part of self-publishing. Um, like so I'll give you one other example. Like I
Great.
knew um, that one thing that was important when you self-publish was you can't just, "Hey, I'm an expert at this topic, I'm just going to write about it." You know
Mhm.
what I mean? Like that's what, if you, as long as you are able to pitch that topic and a traditional publisher is interested, then you just do the writing. But when you're self-publishing, you have to think about other things too. Like here's what I did. Um, my first book was Teaching College, right? Which was all about like,
Right.
how to, teaching professors how to, teach more effectively, college instruction, all that stuff. And I knew there was a demand for it. So the first thing and the reason why I knew was because I had done a search. Like I went on Amazon and I typed in college instruction or college teaching or teaching college, just these kind of keywords.
Mhm.
And there were tons of books. I went on Google and I did a search for that same topic. There are tons of books, there were articles, there are websites that's devoted to this topic. So I know that there is demand for it. But if you type in something else, you may, whatever that is, I can't think of anything right now,
That's
but
okay.
you might have, I don't know, Middle Eastern literature. Like, I don't know, I haven't done it, but like if you type in Middle Eastern literature, you might have some interest in it. But like, that's the first thing you have to do, is to find out whether or not there is demand for your particular book. If
See
you're
if there's an
interested,
audience already out there interested in that topic.
that's exactly it. I help clients not just self-publish, but also kind of how to turn that into a side business or even a full-time business. So if you're looking at it in terms of that, you have to, just like you said, make sure that there is an actual audience for it. So that's really key. So I'll even teach them things like, hey, if you want to know if your topic is profitable, here's what you do. Okay. You type in the topic on Amazon. Number one, are there lots of books on that particular topic? That's actually a good sign. Some people are like, really? That's a bad sign, because it means that I'm competing with so many other books. No, that's a good sign. How many books do you see out there on weight loss? Tons and tons and tons.
And people will keep buying them.
And they'll keep buying it. So
Yeah.
as long as you have a unique voice or a unique system or whatever to help people lose weight or do whatever it is you want to do, then people will find you. And so what I do is I tell my clients, here's what you do. If there's tons of books, that's great. But a better way to tell if it's a profitable idea is see if there are sponsored ads. You know how like when you see like a list of 10 books on Amazon, you'll see like some of the ads are sponsored, meaning like there's some books that are being advertised.
Yeah.
If there are books that are being advertised, and you'll know because at the very top, you'll see sponsored ads or sponsored in small letters. If you see a few of those like interspersed throughout the page, it means someone's actually spending money to advertise their book. Think about it. Like, people aren't going to advertise on a topic that won't make them money.
Right.
So if there's advertising, that's a good sign. And I think I brought up Middle Eastern literature. Like, you type that, go ahead, somebody type that in. Tell me if you see like if you see ads for that particular topic. You might have books on Middle Eastern literature. I'm sure there's a demand for it.
But not necessarily ads.
Right. Not necessarily ads, which tells me that it might not necessarily be a profitable topic. So anyway, so I'm getting into the weeds here, but the idea is that there's a certain way to kind of there's a certain mentality or approach that you have to have, or mindset you have to have going into self-publishing, as opposed to when you're just worried about the writing for a traditional publisher. That's really the point.
Yeah. So self-publishing has really been a great avenue. It's been very successful for you. And you also work with self-publishing for your clients. How has self-publishing helped your clients?
Yeah. So I've actually just more started that part of it fairly recently, and it's been very helpful because I'm seeing, boy, there's a huge demand. So first off, I think the market of education and expertise is huge. Meaning, like, so for example, if you want to write about romance or science fiction, that's great, but that's not my focus when I work with my clients. For me, it's all about selling education and expertise, not non-fiction type stuff.
Got it.
I represent those, or I help those, who are thinking like, hey, I have an advanced degree, right? Either it's a master's or a doctoral or whatever, which means technically I have some kind of expertise. How can I leverage that expertise to help people improve their lives in some way? So if we're talking about academics, it might be related to, oh, hey, I know how to write resumes, or I know how to use SPSS or some research software tool, or I know how to use Photoshop if I'm in the visual arts, or I know how to use a spreadsheet if I'm in accounting, whatever. So it doesn't have to be, so whether it is specifically related to their discipline or not, you can be an expert and write about it. Because I've seen PhDs or even graduate students or graduates who have overcome other obstacles not necessarily related to their field. Like if you've overcome like an illness, or God forbid a divorce, or if you've run a marathon or lost a lot of weight or whatever, you can write about it. Yeah, so I tell my clients that, especially if you have a master's or a PhD, you are an expert at something. Because I find the biggest thing that stops people from writing is that they're like, I'm not an expert. And I'm like, if you have a master's, you're an expert at something. If you have a PhD, you definitely have an expertise in something. Because like, I'll tell you, even like, honestly, like K-12, teachers, right? So I come from that background as well. I used to be a K-12 teacher. And so I've spoken to some of them who are like, yeah, I've always thought about writing a book, but I'm just a teacher. Like, what do I know? And I'm like, you've taught for 10 years. You could write a book for parents about how to prepare children to like do better in school, whatever. Yeah. The point is that you have 10 plus years of experience in education.
Yes.
You can definitely teach someone something. And so for me, like the biggest part of I found one of the biggest obstacles really is that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
That they can't write. But the truth is like, if you've done almost anything, you can write about it. You don't have to have a PhD. But of course, like probably a good portion of your target audience has at least a master's or a doctoral, or a master's at least. So they're an expert in something, and you can of course turn that into a
that is amazing. I love that. So it doesn't have to be in your discipline. It can be something that you've gone through. It can be an interest or a hobby. Just something that you know and you know well.
And actually just kind of going back to your question, because you asked about like how has it helped my clients. Like I had one that I worked with who wrote a book about something that I know nothing about. It was like something called like non-qualified mortgages. I don't know anything about that, which is very technical, but it's his expertise, obviously. And he told me that not only has it led to speaking gigs, but he actually had a team from, I can't remember, it was either Stanford or Carnegie Mellon reach out to him to become a consultant for a new
that's
project.
Great. That's
so
excellent.
I mean, that's the point. Like the book that you publish, it's kind of like the book that you want to publish, that you want to have as the foundation for your business, is a very different book than the book you feel like you should write for that publisher in order to get tenure or whatever, So that's why self-publishing kind of offers that flexibility. And it's designed around your life, around your expertise, around what you want to do beyond academia.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I hear that you have a guide that can help people self-publish and make an income from it.
Yes, I do. And so I was really kind of thrilled with how my experience with self-publishing, because like I said, it kind of freed me from this single track path of academia. The whole like, hey, I have my master's, or hey, I have my PhD. I'm going to do research, or I'm going to do, write an article, or I'm going to organize a conference, or I'm going to write a proposal for a grant or whatever. There's a very narrow defined path in academia. And because there's a larger and larger portion of those who graduate with either a master's or a PhD who have difficulty finding either a research or a tenure track job, right?
Yeah.
It's something like some ridiculous figures, like over 50% of teaching positions are now adjuncts. So we're talking about a lot of contingent professors, a lot of non-tenured or tenured track instructors and professors and lecturers out there who are not full-time. For me, that self-publishing route has really, like I said, it freed me from that single track path of academia. And so I want to help, scholars do as much of that as possible. So I have this PDF guide that I wrote called 7 Steps of Self-Publishing a Profitable Book in 6 Months. I know it sounds kind
6 months.
It sounds a little salesy, I know.
Well, a little bit.
I come from marketing, so I know what
there
I'm
you
saying.
go.
but I say it but I say it because it's doable, because I've seen it done. I've worked with clients that have done the same. I've also experienced it as well. And so, of course, obviously, while you have to put in the work and there's no guarantee for success, yada, 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 there are certain foundational things you have to do if you want to give your chance at success in self-publishing. And that's what this guide's about.
Perfect.
Because like I said before, most self-publishers, they sell very few copies because they're like focused on the writing part. But this publishing guide will kind of walk you through some of the foundational things to do in terms of like, who do you want to target? How do you want to position your book that's different from books that also talk about your topic, stuff like that.
And of course, this is important to think at the start of your project when you're planning out what to write and really, getting focused on that's the path that you're going to take in the future. So important to have those foundational questions.
Lays that foundation, because exactly. And if they want to turn it into a side business or even a full business, you want to get off on the right foot, because the worst thing is that you sell a book and it looks great. And then you realize, oh my God, that's it. There's no more people are going to buy it. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
So it doesn't doesn't go anywhere.
I'm going to link to that guide here.
Awesome.
So definitely click this link, download the guide from Norman Eng, and you can learn how you can self-publish and make an income from it potentially within 6 months.
Let's hope.
So how does social media play a role in promoting your books and promoting your business?
So right now I use Google and Amazon ads mostly, but that's mostly for lead generation in terms of like getting new people, right? Google for business and Amazon for my books, because the reason why I like using them, and I know they're not quite so, they're kind of straddled line between not quite social media, but because I love doing that is because they're targeted and then I'm talking to a warm audience. So in other words, if someone is searching on Google, how do I teach better? My ad will come up, and obviously they're more receptive to that as opposed to like cold advertising. And so that's kind of the reason why I love Google and Amazon ads. And obviously it costs money to place these ads, but just in terms, if you're asking about like promoting my books and my business, those are the
avenues
ways
that you use.
Right. But the truth is that social media, like traditional social media, definitely plays a role as well, but mostly for spreading the new articles or the posts that I write, or even for like a book promotion.
So sharing your content.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Sharing my content. And my big three are Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Like I say, I like Twitter because it just opens up new opportunities and exposes my work to different communities.
I agree.
Yeah, it's and maybe even more so than LinkedIn and Facebook. And I know you can change it so that you can target it to the public as opposed to just a certain group. But, I'll be honest, I'm not an expert in that particular part of it. And I think we connected on Twitter, right? So that's how, right? Did. So that's how we expand our network. So yeah.
No, Twitter's a great way to reach new people and share articles in particular, because it's so easy to click on it. It's so easy to comment on it. And, it's great.
Twitter probably is I would say for now is my favorite. I use Facebook more for joining groups,
right?
And then you can, especially like if you find a targeted group that's within your interest or within your business, just join in and just start talking with people. And I think these are people who are like what you do, or at least your interests are aligned. So that's where I find Facebook is good at. And there are all these groups that you can either join or create on your own. So
that's great. Yeah. You said Twitter was your favorite platform?
Yeah, I think for now, like I said before, I'm not, I'm not here as an expert to talk about like Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. I do use it for sure, mostly to promote content, as you said. And I just like Twitter to link up with different people. Yeah.
Do you find yourself separating the businessy side and the personal side when you're on social media? Or do you use all your channels to talk about kind of everything?
I do. I mean, there's definitely some overlap. With Facebook, I definitely have it, because I'll actually have, whether it's colleagues or people from my business side, try to friend me on Facebook, and I try to keep the private Facebook thing just within family and close friends and stuff like that. But I will have a Facebook business page. But sometimes very easy, as you know, of course, to blend the personal and
of course.
So I have, maybe you have better answers on this, because I sometimes struggle with this. But like even like on Twitter, like there are things that I will want to say, and I don't know if I should say it because right, you as of now, I don't know how you have structured, but as of now, I have one Twitter account.
Okay,
I should probably have two, right? Because
I've seen people do both. Who is it? Echo Rivera, who I had on the show last year. She has one account like you do. And she said that what's most important to her is like just being honest and being herself, sharing what she cares about, even if it's somewhat controversial. So I thought that was interesting. But like personally, I have separate accounts. I have like a private account. I mean, I have a personal account and I have a business account. They're both public, but I do share different things on each.
I think that's probably the way I will end up going, because I came across yesterday. Yesterday I was watching the debates, the political debates and stuff, and I wanted to post some stuff, and I was like, I think I'll probably start the way you're going, just creating a separate a separate profile for Twitter in terms of business. So I do it for Facebook, right? I have my personal for Facebook, and I have my business page for Education by Design and Teaching College. I haven't done it for Twitter. I think it makes sense to probably do that first and maybe test the waters. I understand where Echo is coming from. And maybe at some point I might feel comfortable doing that. Politics is a very complicated thing, and
it can be. And it can cause like some really strong reactions.
It can, and especially like when you are helping them. If I'm helping them, for example, improve their instruction or self-publish, like I don't necessarily think they need to know or necessarily need to care about what my political or social views are.
Oh, yeah, that can be very true.
I'll think about that.
Well, I think that the important thing is that it's something that we're all kind of struggling with. It's something that we're all thinking about.
That is a 21st century struggle for sure.
Yeah, we're all trying to figure out like what is the best thing to say that doesn't step on a lot of toes, but still gets our message across.
But I may now see some of your stuff on Twitter, which are, if I recall, like very specific, of course, to, academic design and stuff like that. And then others that are less related to it. And you seem like you're okay with it. Like I see it and I'm absolutely fine with it. So I need to try to figure out that line, that balance between the two. So as you said, it is the challenge.
It's a process.
Yeah, I'll try that. But I'm going to separate it first, I think, just to be safe.
What is your top recommendation for educators who want to get their name out there?
Oh, okay. So you know what? I actually recommend finding, interestingly, podcasters and bloggers who are big in your space, or whatever field you're in. So I'm in. So for example, with my book Teaching College, when it came out in 2017, I pitched the book to a blogger by the name of Jennifer Gonzalez, who runs a podcast and website called Cult of Pedagogy, which is specifically related to instruction, which of course overlaps with my audience. Like hers is more like educators in general, more K-12, but also including college professors. Great. And she had like 33,000 subscribers at that time, 2 years ago. I'm sure now she's a ton more.
Amazing.
Which is huge in that niche. Okay,
of course.
Right, this is a particular niche in education. 33,000 is pretty good. And so I did an article for her site, and I did the podcast with her, and I at the same time did a launch promo for the book because the book had just came out, and I ended up getting thousands of her subscribers to my site who wanted to get my free book at that time for that limited time. And I started out with like a list, this was when I first started. I only had like an email list of like 200 people, even less than that. And so leveraging someone else's list of subscribers, as long as they overlap with your target, for me is a really good strategy. Because like the worst thing you can do is launch your book or your blog post only on social media, on Twitter and whatever, hoping that people are going to flood to it. And let's be honest, like it's very competitive out there. It's just not going to happen unless you have that huge list or followers on YouTube or whatever that is. Most of us don't. And so for me, I found out the key is to give something of value to the listeners or readers from a site or a podcast with a huge following. That's how you get your name out there.
What a great tip. Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. Can I ask, did you just send an email, like a quick email to say, hey, I have this idea?
Yeah, so I've also, through the self-publishing process, I've also worked with some clients as well who want to get their work out there. And yes, so I do suggest email, but like there's a very specific way. Okay, I'm sure there are many ways to do it. Like I found that a successful way or a more effective way to do it is not just say, hey, I got this new book coming out. Can you promote it on your podcast? That's not going to happen. So in the end, you have to go back to that marketing, what I call the marketing mindset, which is how can you help that other person? Because in the end, that's what marketers do. They're thinking about how can I help my target audience? How can I help my readers? How can I help my customers? And in a way, That's what teachers are doing. How do I help my students?
Right.
And so it's the same thing when you approach a podcaster or blogger or whoever, a big one, right? Because they have so many requests coming in every single week or every single day that unless you have something that's going to help them, they're not going to waste their time. And so that's why I create that value piece. I say, oh, I have something that I think is great for your particular audience. And then I explain what it is and how it's going to help them, because it's hard to resist. If I'm a big time podcaster or blogger and someone approaches me and says that they have something that my readers or my listeners will eat up, I'm going to listen to it, or at least I'm going to at least entertain that idea first. And so you have to come with it with that mindset of how can I help that other person succeed? And as long as, that's why I say like the overlap in terms of the target audience, you have to find someone whose target audience overlaps with yours. Give them or their audience huge value. And if you do that, then they'll definitely be much more open, as opposed to you going there and say, hey, can you promote my book? No, it's like, I'm so busy. I have so much stuff going on. I have a lot of other people who also are asking me to feature them. And so you have to bring something that's going to help them or their target audience. That's what it's all about.
Great. So send an email, but do your research first and make sure that you're providing something of value and explaining what that value is in the email.
That's exactly it. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much for that response. I think that my listeners are going to really benefit from that. Definitely.
Yeah. It's always, the hard part is, of course, the how. Like, how do you write it? Like, there are ways to write it. But of course, as long as you understand the foundational idea of you're there to help them, and then in turn, they'll help you. Always, always, always help the other person first. And if they find that you're helping them a lot and giving them tremendous value, they will definitely kind of keep you in their loop, so to speak.
Wonderful. Before we go, I'd love to hear about your newest book, Presenting the Professor's Guide to Powerful Communication. Why are good presentations important for educators?
Yeah. Oh, sure. So I think we can all agree, right, that communication is so important, right, to academics, whether you're scholars, researchers, or educators. And so they're constantly presenting about their topics, right? Whether it's in the classroom or at conferences, but oftentimes like they do it in a way that doesn't engage their audience, right? We all remember back in as an undergrad, how boring the content can be. Yeah. And so, right, we know what they do. Like professors or faculty, oftentimes they read the slides word for word, or they're jamming in too much content, or they're talking for too long, all of which turn people off. And so presenting is not just, kind of like what I said before, it's not just about the content. It's about getting audiences to see things differently and even to change their minds or to take action. Like delivering lots of information just doesn't work. We got so much information these days. In marketing, there's it's not a saying, but there's a thing that we all kind of know, that on a given day, we see like 3,000 commercial messages. Like, don't quote me on that number. We see thousands of commercial messages every single day, whether it's logos on a t-shirt or a hat, or billboards on our way to work, or pop-up ads on our website. So we ignore 90% of what we see, what we hear, and what we read. And the only way to break through the clutter is to be clear and concrete, relevant, and novel, like those three things. And so my question is, how often is a typical presentation that you see at a conference either concrete, relevant, or novel, right? For students, like you have to even be more so, especially for like undergraduate students. Like if the presentation lecture is like too abstract, they're going to ignore it. If it's not relevant to their lives, they're going to ignore it. And if you present it too long or in a boring way, they're going to ignore it. That's the premise of my book, Presenting, right? It's designed to help professors think about what the audience is going through as they listen to the presentation, right? So when you go through that process, you'll realize why most presentations put people to sleep from the very start. Like, why do we spend so much time introducing ourselves at the beginning of a presentation? Like, when you go to a conference and like the speaker speaks for like 3 minutes talking about, my name is such and such. I come from such and such an institution and my background is XYZ. Like, the truth is, like, nobody really cares.
And it's like also generally after the chair, the presentation person has already like said the bio. So like everyone knows who you are. It's probably also on your slides.
That's exactly, like, here's the thing, like, they're not thinking that the chair of the panel has already introduced you. So they put it in their slide. So, you know, or how about this? Like, why is it that we put up bullet points on the slide and then talk about those bullet points? Nobody's listening because they're too busy copying down the slide, like students I'm talking about. Stuff like that. And so if you put yourselves in the position of your target audience, right? And this kind of goes back to, you know, a lot of the book comes from that marketing background. If you put yourselves in the position of the audience member, then you'll realize that what they go through, a lot of what we do is really undermining and really like almost trying to disengage them. Just by the things that we say, just by the things that we do, like introducing ourselves, it just either turns them off or it starts to begin the process of disengagement. And so in the end, the book helps academics design their communication to resonate with audiences rather than inform them. All right. So it's great for lecture presentations, conference presentations, or even if you want to present your work to, like, I don't know, industry stakeholders. That's what this book's really about.
Perfect. So if you're interested in presenting and really getting through to your audience, click this link to check out Norman's new book, all about presenting and how you can communicate and really understand what your audience is thinking and feeling while you're talking.
Very cool.
Norman, thank you so much for this conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
It's been so much fun. It's like a conversation. It's very cool.
That's all for this interview, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Next up is Dr. Melanie Bruce, marketing professor and owner of the Leveraged PhD, so be sure to subscribe to The Social Academic today.